Bernard-Henri Lévy is in town, and we were all just so honored and humbled. So Monsieur Henri Lévy is now in the middle of a book tour, Israel Alone, in the United States, and somehow he was able to take, 30 minutes of his time to come and address us here today. So without any further ado, philosopher, intellectual, filmmaker, Bernard-Henri Lévy.
Yes, thanks a lot for the, it's a last-minute invitation. It is last-minute remarks, but I'm really happy to deliver them very briefly. Not half an hour, by the way, much less.
I just want your...
among
there we go. Now you have your name.
This great audience. No, just one remark about the current situation of the Jews and of Israel. Israel, as you may know, as you all know, is facing an existential threat and war. Existential means a war that has no other aim than annihilation. Israel had to face a lot of wars in the past, but there was, whatever you thought, territorial dispute, conflict, whatever. This time, maybe for the first time, Israel is facing enemies on 5 or 6 or 7 fronts, animated by from a strong country, which is Iran, and there is no other target than the eradication of Israel. When they say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they mean, first of all, Palestine will be under boot and will be under terror, but they mean eradication of Israel. This is the fact. And these sorts of war, not only it is the first time in the history of Israel, but it is not so frequent in the history of mankind in general. Total war is rare. Rare. There are maybe 2 or 3 examples since antiquity of total wars, a war which has no other aim than the disparition of the targeted adversary. Number 2, all Jews in the world, it is a fact, are today, it is a fact, and it is a new form of anti-Semitism. All the Jews in the world are associated to Israel. There is a new anti-Semitism running, blasting all over the world, in the campuses in America, in the campuses in France, in the Muslim world, in Latin America, in the global South, an anti-Semitism which nickname is anti-Zionism. It is a fact. We live in a moment of history where the only comestible form of anti-Semitism, the only possible narrative for anti-Semitism, for the hate of the Jews, is the hate of Israel. The association is done. And in front of that, you have some Jews in America, in France, elsewhere, who sometimes by goodwill, sometimes by good faith, sometimes by fear, try to get out of the trap, try to dissociate themselves, try to say, we are not, we don't support Israel. We are supporters of an equivalence between Israel and Hamas. You have a lot of Jews who play that game. I don't want to shame anyone, but again, it is a fact. It is part of the situation we're facing today. This pattern, this situation, reminds me of another one, terrible, which is the 30s. In the 30s, you had an existential threat against the people of Israel, against the Jews, who were promised to annihilation. You had some Jews, a lot in Europe, who said, okay, it is for the others. We are not member really of that club. We are good Germans, we are good French. It is not, we are not concerned. At the end of the day, at the end of the dark day, they were caught as the others. They were in the same track and in the same train. Those who could escape were morally and intellectually disarmed by this way of dissociating themselves, and it helped the whole Jewry in the world to go to the absolute disaster which we know. And I feel sometimes that we are in a sort of similar situations. That's why I'm happy to open this afternoon with a call for unity. I know that there are disputes among Jews, and this is the vibrancy of the Jewish world. It is the spirit of Judaism. It is the very part of the identity of being a Jew to disagree, to build paradox, and so on. But I would like to beg, to demand, and to pray everyone here and beyond to try to leave the disputes for tomorrow. For the moment, my feeling, my conviction, is that we all have one duty. We can be Zionist or not exactly Zionist, but we have to recognize that Zionism is one of the great, brilliant, bright ideas of the 20th century which survive till now. They say that Zionism is racism, blah, blah. We should say, we should insist, because it is the truth. And even if we don't live in Israel, even if we disagree with some parts of the Zionist program, we should say and repeat, because it is a historical fact, that Zionism is the name of one of the very few, if not the only, ideology of a liberation movement that did not fail, that succeeded, that turned into the building of a democracy which stays strong even in the most, in the biggest turmoils. We have to say that, at least that. We have to remember, we Jews of all spirit, of all tendencies, we have to remember, and those who try to dissociate themselves, those who criticize Israel at this moment, have to know, because I'm convinced of what I'm going to say, that even them, if they are free, if they are proud, if they stand firm on their feet and in their mind, it is because Israel exists. The birth of Israel after the Second World War, the date of my birth, by the way, I'm exactly the same age of Israel. The birth of Israel changed everything. in the identity of every single Jew in the world. The Jews stand in a new way in the world. The Jews can look in a new way at their adversaries, at the people who hate them, whoever, because Israel exists. Even if you don't like Israel, those who don't like Israel, even the Jews who never go to Israel, they have to know, even if they are not conscious of it, that part of their pride, part of their identity is due to the very existence in the concert of nations of the state of Israel and the consistence of that state. And this is, we have no time, but I could demonstrate that philosophically, symbolically. I could demonstrate how the two are completely linked. And if the Jews of today are less shy than in the past, if they are strong, if they refuse to be humiliated in New York, in Paris, in Berlin, part of the reason is that somewhere, remotely, in the Middle East, even if they don't like it, Israel exists. They have to be aware of that. They have to remember that. And they have to remember also, and finally, that if the worst had to happen again, which I hope not, and which I believe will not, if the worst had to happen again, if the gangsters of the Hamas did win the battle of the brains and of the minds, if the partisans of the delegitimation of Jewishness prevailed, if anti-Semitism reached again a peak, if the bands, the gangs who tried to terrorize the campuses did win the battle, which again I don't believe, but my father and grandfather did not believe it in the 30s either. But if that happened, we all have to remember that Israel remains and will be exactly what it was created for, which is a safe space, a shelter, a sanctuary for all the Jews in the world. I am among those who believe that we have to wage the battle against anti-Semitism in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Paris. We don't have to quit the battlefield. We should never give back to the stupid morons, pro-Hamas, anti-Semite. We cannot leave them any inch of ground. But we never know. We knew, the Jews knew some periods of their history where all of a sudden there was no longer weak and powerful Jews, no longer poor and rich Jews, no longer influential and forceless and weak Jews. There was just Jews who were left to the mob, who were devastated by the hate. And at that time, in the Kingdom of France, in the burning Europe, there was no shelter except maybe America. Today, there is a place to go. And this place is a blessed, for this reason, is a blessed place, is a sanctuary which has to be cherished and defended. It is Israel. the time for policy will come back. The time for dispute will come back. I'm sure that the spirit of the Jewish people will flourish again, as it did since millenaries in Pilpul, Talmudic and political Pilpul. But for the moment, we have to defend the old house. We have to defend the national temple, if I dare say. We have to back Israel against the fascists, the killers, the enemies of all humanity, who are the Hamas, the Hezbollah, their associates, their godfather in Iran, and all those who all over the world support them. This is for us also in Washington, D.C. and in Paris an existential war, and we have to win it. Thank you very much.